Charles, some people can't handle the truth, but we've got a few good con men tonight. I can't remember if we've ever used this one before. It seems almost impossible that we haven't.
I think we're at a stage now. I mean, of course, we started on this project back in, I think, June of 2017. And that's a good 10 year. We're coming up on completing 10 years of this. So, and mostly 2 per week. So that's a lot. And actually, in some cases, we've done a lot more than that per week. So there are a lot of posters out there, but there haven't been that many good movies produced of late. So it's not surprising. No. We may have to come up with another approach.
Start making our own movies and just call exactly. It whatever. But no, a few good con men and a woman, or, well, I mean, we're not biologists, of course, but Hillary Clinton, I don't know, they considered, what's her name, Demi Moore among the men. So we're just mimicking what they were saying. But Charles, everybody is talking about the Epstein files, and it's been a crazy deal. You were, I guess, the first person, certainly to bring it to my attention, to talk about how Epstein had famously, through his ridiculous asshole of a lawyer, Alan Dershowitz, claimed to have participated in the creation of the Clinton Global Initiative. It's important to get that detail right. I know you're very detail-oriented. A lot of people mistakenly say the Clinton Foundation, the whatever, but it's the Clinton Global Initiative, right? That Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, claimed to have created.
And therein lies the irony. I mean, here we are, or the essential problem that the Clintons now face. They say that they're going to sit for transcribed interviews, perhaps in front of Congress, maybe not in front of Congress, on the 26th and 27th of February 2026. Now, the reality is that the Clintons look at everything, all aspects of their life, through politics, specifically protecting their brand within the Democratic Party. That's their paramount objective. When he was president, and on the ropes for many different reasons, I think on the first an early vacation, presidential vacation, they actually did polling to figure out where was the best place to have a vacation. Instead of just authentically saying, Chelsea's whatever years old at the time, what would a child of that age want to do? We're president of the United States. I can go anywhere in the world I want to go. What does Chelsea want to do? Or what do we three want to do to take a break? So they do polling to figure that out. And another thing that's kind of interesting about them is they obviously believe that they can game the system. Why? Because they have very successfully. I mean, Bill and Hillary Clinton have more skeletons in their backyard than most graveyards have. And somehow they're still celebrated around the world. Somehow she is getting all these honorary positions as chancellor of this university, visiting professor at that place, this institute named after her. They're still getting book deals and speaking deals, and families are probably getting, Chelsea and others are getting sweetheart arrangements. And yet at this date, no one really knows the truth about what happened during the 8 years he served as president. Why? Because you can't be certain that the records that were created in that period are actually stored in Little Rock. There are a lot of questions about provenance. And of course, during his presidency, the world shifted from primarily a paper-based record-keeping approach to using email and creating and having a lot of electronic records. So we don't really know, with regard to the Clinton presidency, what percentage of the record is stored in Little Rock. We don't know if it's 20%, 80%, 3%. We simply don't know. So one thing that we do know, with the famous Kamala Harris quote, "with the passage of time," moron, is that a lot of the Clinton insiders have made money off the presidency by publishing books. So these are supposedly loyal allies who, at the time books were printed, in the case of McAuliffe and others, Taylor Branch, people expected Hillary Clinton to be the next president of the United States. And therefore, any problems that might be created would probably disappear. Now looking back at these books, it is crystal clear that one of the Clintons' approaches to serious problems is to delay, use any means possible to push things out. So now they face, in theory, this appointment in Samara. That they face perhaps political death on the 26th and 27th of February. What is one possibility? Or what are the possibilities that could happen? One is that they just say at the last minute, whoops, we have a health emergency, we have this emergency, Chelsea has a problem with one of her children, whatever the issue is, they push back past February 26th and 27th in a way that causes the House not to arrest them. So that, to me, that's the highest probability likelihood of what's going to happen on the 26th and 27th. Should they get to the 26th or 27th, having to testify under oath in front of Congress about what they were doing with Epstein, that's a question that, from what I see in the public record, goes back to the presidency itself. Jeffrey Epstein made it for him and for many rich people a very modest contribution. It was either $10,000 or $25,000, assuming he was a multimillionaire at the time. And with that, he made it to the president, something like the Presidential Historical Museum or something like that, which is a charity set up, I believe, in the Eisenhower period or maybe the Truman period, to raise funds for the maintenance of the White House. So he made, for him, a small contribution, but it's not a high priority for most people to help the government pay for something the government should already pay for. And so because of that contribution, he, and perhaps Ghislaine, but he was invited to a reception where he shook hands with Hillary, who was, I think, looking over this, maybe even with Bill. This, I think, occurred in around, from memory now, don't hold me to the date, but around 1995. So you have a record of Epstein getting in touch with Bill while he was still president, Hillary. But then in a technique that the chairman of Dillon Reed told me about, that he employed, which was whenever people have famous people have a problem, this chairman, when he was alive, and business people would call them up and say, hi, I'm the chairman of Dillon Reed. You don't know me, but our firm does many things. Can I come by and see you? Because, everybody makes mistakes, and maybe there's a way we can get you rehabilitated. So that may have been the approach that Epstein used to get back on the gravy train, or to get, a much higher profile than perhaps he ever, in hindsight, wanted by September of 2002. Remember that on the way out the door to the White House, Bill made, I think, a very fateful error, pardoning in the way he did a lot of people at the last minute, literally at midnight and shortly after midnight, the final moments of his presidency. The deep state and the swamp have been very effective at shifting our attention onto Mark Rich and Pincus Green, and not having us go into the kind of depth that we all should be going to all the other people he pardoned. A lot of them are problems today, including Susan Rosenberg, who was very much involved in the suspicious fundraising for Democrats, and for noxious causes that basically shouldn't be tax exempt. She's somebody who actually blew up, or tried to blow up and detonated explosives, a federal building. Why would you commute or pardon that lady? She should have served out her term. What kind of a message does that send? It's okay to blow up a federal building, because eventually a crooked president is going to give you a pardon. I'm much more concerned about that than Mark Rich. And he shouldn't have gotten a pardon either. But I think I believe he pardoned a bunch of the Puerto Rican terrorists as well.
Yeah. FALN or something like that.
And that comes a little bit closer to home, because my father-in-law was, I believe, I don't know that he was there the instant the bomb went off in Francis Tavern, but I think he was in proximity to it. Why would you ever pardon people like that? What does that what kind of a message does that send about the Clintons? Anyway, if they're going to go ahead and testify truthfully under oath now, on the 26th and 27th, and they go into the rabbit hole of what Bill was doing with Jeffrey Epstein from after January 20th, 2001. That's a very dangerous territory for the Clintons, because the first issue is, did the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation even exist lawfully on January 20th, 2001? That is to say, was it ever organized, just not enough to simply be incorporated? Did the Board of Trustees, the non-lawyers who first got onto the Board of Trustees, did they ever officially adopt articles of incorporation that the incorporators, the three lawyers, Kendall, Seligman, and Tisdale from the Arkansas firm, Bruce Lindsay's firm, did the trustees ever go in and say, okay, one of our first acts now that we've been appointed, we're going to officially amend the articles of incorporation to remove the section that discusses incorporation, and instead say that, the trustees adopted these articles. Apparently they were appointed, the initial trustees, the non-lawyer trustees, were appointed December 23, 1997. They never did that. Did they make sure during the term, why didn't they file the first 990 on May 15th, 1998? Did they truthfully disclose their related party relationships? And the answer to that question is certainly not. Did they disclose any business arrangements that may have been made? Did they disclose how they were funded in 1997 and 1998? Truthfully, of course they didn't. In 98 and 99 and 2000, did they have the required officers? They needed a president, a secretary, and a treasurer. Did they have them? In 99, did they have 3 trustees? So, there are a lot of, and remember, Bill and Hillary cannot say that they don't understand the law. And they certainly can't say that they don't understand Arkansas law. They could try to say that maybe they don't understand New York law, which is tougher on charities than Arkansas law. But, that's a very difficult place to go. Now, if they set this up the way they generally do, where, yes, there's an inquiry, but a Democrat representative has 5 minutes to ask questions, and that's followed by a Republican, a Democrat. If you do it that way, you're never going to get the head of steam up that you want to get on and really getting to the bottom of what happened here with Epstein, because the Republicans will try to ask questions and the Democrats will object to anything that a Republican say. And then the Democrats are going to spend time saying, Mrs. Clinton,
why aren't we
under
talking
your
about
tenure,
January 6th or something like that? They'll ask
no, they're
that.
going to, they say that, or they'll say, if it's Mrs. Clinton, they'll say, I guess she wasn't the first female Secretary of State. That was Madeleine Albright, but she, they're just going to praise her. Is it true, Mrs. Clinton, that you were the first lady to ever hold high elective office in this country? What did you accomplish in your first 6 years? They'll have it all choreographed, and the media will be waiting at the end to say that Republicans were mean, they were men, they were mean, they were nasty. They asked all kinds of inappropriate questions of a former first lady and leading presidential candidate and dean of this law school, and the mainstream press will just, say no matter what happens that it was a victory for her. Is one approach, unless they dive into the question of with Bill, and I believe I think it's Hillary first on the 22nd and Bill second on the 27th. I may have that wrong. But with Bill, all you have to do is say, all right, Bill, what were you doing with Jeffrey Epstein and the Clinton Global Initiative? And I think it was also the Clinton HIV/AIDS initiative. What were you specifically doing with it? How many countries did you visit? You ask them those type of questions first. And then you say, all right, what was your connection, Bill, to the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation? Well, I found it in 2001. Really? Okay, here's a 990 I have here for 2001. I don't see your name on it. How come you're not in here? You did all this important work, you say? in 2001, here's what the books show. They show that the total program service expenses of the foundation were minuscule. The travel expenses were minuscule. Who funded your travel and how did you do it? You say you opened your office in New York in 2001. Are you aware that such a foundation has to register in New York? I mean, your wife was representing the state in 2001. She's a lawyer. You're a lawyer. Did you understand that you had to actually file paperwork in New York while you were fundraising in New York, doing all this work? I mean, if they actually appear, I don't think there's any way they can technically win against prosecutors if those prosecutors ultimately are willing to go after this fake presidential foundation.
I think they're going to dig in hard on what's the definition of is defense. But apparently, Charles, the British people who are busy buggering children at the BBC have reported, according to AI, I don't see it here in the article, but they say that the original subpoena was for a closed door testimony, but now they've agreed to do it in public. I don't know where it says that here.
Yeah, I've seen both reports, but obviously they've done polling, and the polling is always, excuse me, the answer you get in a poll is shaped by the question and by the composition of the responders. So the polling, I think, and polling is frequently badly wrong. Polling may have come back from friendly pollsters. My senior paper advisor, Stan Greenberg, may still be working with them. And that polling may say, listen, you're approaching your 80s. You devoted, quote, a lifetime of public service. You've never tried to make money off your offices. Ha, ha, ha. And the public understands this. Your past controversies have already been litigated in the public eye. I would guess that the polling for Hillary and the polling for Bill on favorability it could be close to Trump's, depending on how the questions are asked. And they may just believe that they can go in with all their allies amongst the Democrats and the press, that they can bulldoze through it the way Hillary bulldozed through Benghazi, because no one will ask any tough questions. And even if tough questions are asked and bad answers come out, no one's prepared to prosecute them in Washington, D.C. or New York.
That's right. Well, they can also rely on the what difference does it make anyway defense. Yeah. They have a number of really strong defenses, Charles. What is means, what difference does it make? They're so ridiculous, the Clintons.
Yeah, and the reality is, it's interesting when you take Thomas Jefferson as an example. I mean, even to this day, and we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, which was authored by Thomas Jefferson, but Jefferson didn't believe that was his most significant accomplishment. And we know that because he wrote a lot of letters and on a lot of topics. He wrote only one book that was published, and he wasn't writing it as a book. He was asked to answer questions that were sent by the French government of basically what the fuck is going on here in the United States. And he answers their questions in great depth, great specificity, and very elegantly. In his book, Notes on the State of Virginia, or Notes on the Present State of Virginia. But there's a person who just, he did what he did. He was a highly educated person, and he instructed that his tombstone, this is a man who was, I think he was Vice President of the United States, he was President of the United States, he was Governor of Virginia, he was the equivalent of Secretary of State, I think, or Ambassador to France. And unlike Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, who probably already thought through the mausoleum that they want, to laud their various accomplishments following their death, Jefferson insisted that on his tombstone it would read, author of the Virginia Statute of Freedom, author of the Declaration of Independence, and founder of the University of Virginia. That's what he considered to be his accomplishments, even though he was also all the things I just mentioned. So these are people, the Clintons, who basically don't have a decent bone in their bodies, as far as I can tell. I mean, they talk about. I was just reading this actually. Bill talks about his the birth of Chelsea, and they 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 informed him when he was governor that Hillary would need a C-section. And Bill writes in his book, My Lies, I mean, My Life, that that he said to people, look, I'm not worried about the sight of blood or passing out. I could be in the room if they cut Hillary open. I think from her sternum, to her womb, I could watch that. I'm like, what?
I just don't want to see her naked.
I mean, and imagine writing something like that. That's really grisly.
It really
you
is.
love
sick
this person
and weird.
Yeah,
you probably want to hold the knife.
Yeah, it's just really weird. And then to say that the birth of Chelsea was the most important, and then to spend time with Epstein. I mean, you have only one daughter, and you're gonna, after when the press is howling for your scalp, you're going to try to redeem yourself by going on a 727 by a bunch of Hollywood weirdos across Africa with somebody you barely know in 2002, and then have no evidence of that in the financial statements of your foundation, and think that nobody's ever going to notice it?
Charles, this wasn't Bill Clinton's first foray into insane. There was that guy in Arkansas who I think was convicted for cocaine trafficking. What was his name?
Dan Lassiter?
Lassiter, exactly. They were accused of turning 16-year-old girls into drug addicts and then prostitutes. Lassiter was, at least.
Right. And again, the way I, now in my advanced age, looking back on life, people understand, I think, mature people understand that you're never going to be lauded by 100% of the people who evaluate you. Right? There are going to be people who look at life through one prism and say, you're white, you're evil for that reason, nothing you can do will ever redeem yourself. And then there are other people who are, the other end of the spectrum. So a good, happy result is if you can get to 51% popularity. And as far as the president's concerned, I mean, being president of the United States, you are the designated recipient of the world's shit. Any problem that happens on Earth, you gotta respond to it, right? So you're never going to satisfy everybody, and in time, you will be judged. And Bill Clinton didn't reluctantly run for president, nor did Hillary. These are people who, from their earliest moments, decided they wanted to be president of the United States. So they can't say they didn't want this.
And Charles, I don't want to stop you while you're on a tear, but we're just a minute away from making our way over here to the First Amendment Forum, where sponsors of the show can join us on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. People can also see it by sponsoring me on X. Follow me on X at JG_CSTT. Subscribe there. And people get all the sponsor exclusive content. A lot of the comments right now, Charles, are saying that the birth of Chelsea was the most important day of Webb Hubbell's life. I don't know if we want to address that in the in-depth conversation, but we've got just a minute left. There's still a lot to discuss about this.
Yeah, I was just going to say that when you're thinking about a presidential library or having a library about yourself and your presidency, if you're confident that on balance you've done more good than harm, you want the harm to be addressed, right? All the controversy of your presidency, you want the information out there, and you want the good stuff in your presidency out there, and you hope on balance in time, as people, as passions cool, as participants die off, that you can have a dispassionate evaluation. This is just pure propaganda. This is a propaganda institution.
Gotta let that statute of limitations run, Charles.
Exactly.
So Bill Clinton is very cognizant of that. Depends on what his definition of is. So we'll break right here, Charles. We'll be back in 5 minutes. I hope everybody will stay with us. Follow me on X at JG_CSTT. I've just dropped a counter lawfare bomb on there if people haven't seen that yet. And then don't go there now. Stay with us for the sponsor exclusive segment on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Huge thank you to everybody who makes the show